What if one military miscalculation in the Persian Gulf could trigger a war that engulfs the entire Middle East, drawing in superpowers and threatening global oil supplies within hours? Right now, as you watch this video, the Supreme Leader of Iran has issued one of the most direct warnings in decades, a warning so severe that military analysts across Washington, London, and Brussels are calling emergency meetings to assess what comes next. The stakes have never been higher, the rhetoric has never been sharper, and the possibility of a regional conflagration has never felt more real. This isn't just another diplomatic spat or routine saber rattling. This is a threshold moment that could reshape the geopolitical landscape for generations. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you understand the powder keg that is the Middle East right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're diving deep into the most critical military and geopolitical developments happening around the world, and you won't want to miss a single update. Today, we're breaking down Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's stark warning to the United States, a warning that has sent shockwaves through defense departments, intelligence agencies, and military command centers worldwide. But this isn't just about words. Behind this warning lies a complex web of military capabilities, proxy forces, strategic alliances, and regional tensions that could explode into open warfare at any moment. Let me paint the picture for you. In recent statements broadcast across Iranian state media and echoed through official channels, Khamenei made it crystal clear that any direct American military strike on Iranian territory would not be met with a proportional response confined to Iran's borders. Instead, he warned of a regional conflict that would engulf multiple countries, disrupt critical maritime choke points, and potentially drag in actors from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, from Shia militias in Iraq to Syrian government forces still loyal to Tehran. Think about what that means for just a moment. We're not talking about a bilateral conflict between two nations. We're talking about a domino effect that could ignite simultaneous battlefronts across thousands of miles, involving dozens of armed groups, millions of civilians, and economic disruption on a scale not seen since the oil crisis of the 1970s. Now, you might be wondering, why would Iran's supreme leader make such a bold statement now? What has changed in the strategic calculus? Here's where it gets really interesting, and why you need to pay close attention to every word I'm about to say. The timing of this warning coincides with escalating tensions over Iran's nuclear program, which Western intelligence agencies believe has advanced significantly despite international agreements and sanctions. Satellite imagery analyzed by defense experts shows continued activity at key nuclear facilities, underground enrichment sites that are hardened against conventional airstrikes, and research centers developing capabilities that could, according to some assessments, put Iran within striking distance of weapons-grade uranium. The United States and its allies, particularly Israel, have repeatedly stated that a nuclear-armed Iran is unacceptable, drawing red lines that sound remarkably similar to the warnings we heard before previous Middle Eastern conflicts. But here's the twist that most mainstream media outlets aren't emphasizing, and this is crucial for understanding the real military dynamics at play. Iran has spent the last 2 decades building what defense analysts call an axis of resistance, a network of proxy forces, allied militias, and sympathetic government actors that extends Iran's military reach far beyond its borders without requiring Iranian regular forces to directly engage. This is asymmetric warfare taken to a strategic level. Hezbollah in Lebanon possesses an estimated 150,000 rockets and missiles, some with precision guidance systems that could strike Israeli cities, military bases, and critical infrastructure. The Houthis in Yemen have demonstrated their ability to launch drone and missile attacks on Saudi Arabia and have threatened international shipping in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Iraqi Shia militias, many of which receive training, funding, and weapons from Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, operate with significant autonomy and have attacked American forces and interests repeatedly over the past few years. Let me break down what a regional conflict would actually look like, because this isn't hypothetical war gaming anymore. Military planners on all sides have run countless simulations, and the scenarios are sobering. If the United States were to conduct airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities or military targets, Iran's first move would likely be to activate these proxy forces simultaneously across multiple theaters. Hezbollah could rain rockets down on northern Israel, forcing the Israeli Defense Forces to respond with ground operations in southern Lebanon, a region where Hezbollah has had years to prepare defensive positions, tunnel networks, and tank capabilities that could inflict significant casualties. At the same time, Houthi forces could intensify attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure and attempt to mine or blockade the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, through which millions of barrels of oil pass daily en route to Europe and Asia. Iraqi militias could launch coordinated attacks on the roughly 2,000 American troops still stationed in Iraq, as well as target the massive American embassy in Baghdad. And that's just the opening moves. Iran itself possesses significant retaliatory capabilities that would come into play. The Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy specializes in asymmetric naval warfare in the confined waters of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. They operate swarms of fast attack craft, mini submarines, coastal missile batteries, and naval mines that could threaten the roughly 21 million barrels of oil that transit the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That's about 21% of global petroleum liquids consumption. If that flow is disrupted for even a week, oil prices would skyrocket and global markets would panic, and the economic fallout would be measured in trillions of dollars. Iran knows this leverage intimately and has designed its entire naval strategy around the ability to hold global energy supplies hostage. Now here's something that should make you sit up and pay attention, because this detail changes everything about how this conflict could unfold. Iran has also developed a sophisticated ballistic and cruise missile arsenal over the past decade, with ranges that can reach American military bases in Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and even Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. These aren't the crude Scud derivatives of the 1990s. We're talking about missiles with terminal guidance systems, maneuverable warheads designed to evade missile defenses, and sufficient accuracy to target specific buildings within military complexes. In September 2019, Iran or its proxies demonstrated this capability by striking Saudi Aramco facilities with cruise missiles and drones, temporarily knocking out roughly 5% of global oil production with a precision that shocked defense analysts worldwide. Imagine that capability turned against American military infrastructure across the region. The United States, of course, is not without overwhelming military advantages, and this is where the strategic calculation becomes even more complex. American air power is unmatched globally, with fifth-generation stealth fighters, long-range bombers, cruise missiles launched from ships and submarines, and an intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance network that can track targets in real time across the entire Middle East. The U.S. military could potentially degrade Iranian air defenses, destroy key military facilities, and eliminate much of Iran's offensive capability within days or even hours of sustained operations. But here's the critical question that keeps Pentagon planners awake at night. what happens after those initial strikes. Iran's strategy isn't built around defending its territory in conventional terms. It's built around making any attack so costly in terms of regional stability, economic disruption, and prolonged asymmetric conflict that the United States would think twice before pulling the trigger. This brings us to another layer of complexity that most people don't fully appreciate, and why Khamenei's warning resonates so powerfully within Iran's strategic community. Any American attack on Iran would almost certainly require extensive use of regional bases and airspace from countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. But here's the problem: those countries are themselves vulnerable to Iranian retaliation, and their populations may not support hosting American forces for a war against a fellow Muslim nation. We've already seen cracks in regional unity, with some Gulf states pursuing cautious diplomatic engagement with Tehran, even as they maintain security partnerships with Washington. If Iran can credibly threaten to turn any country that hosts American strikes into a target for proxy attacks, missile strikes, or economic sabotage, it creates a diplomatic dilemma that complicates American military planning enormously. Let's talk about the nuclear dimension for a moment, because this is the elephant in the room that makes everything exponentially more dangerous. Western intelligence agencies believe Iran could potentially produce enough fissile material for a nuclear weapon within weeks or months if it chose to abandon all restraints and push its enrichment program to maximum capacity. This is what's called breakout time, and it's shrinking. The calculus is brutal. If the United States waits too long, Iran might cross the nuclear threshold, making military action far riskier or even impossible. But if the United States acts too soon with insufficient intelligence or without exhausting diplomatic options, it could trigger the very regional war Khamenei is warning about, all while failing to permanently eliminate Iran's nuclear knowledge base or technical capacity. Israeli intelligence and military officials have been even more vocal than their American counterparts, with some arguing that time has already run out for a purely diplomatic solution. Here's where the human element comes into this cold strategic analysis, and why you need to understand the stakes for ordinary people living in this region. We're talking about population centers in Iran, Israel, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and potentially beyond, all potentially in the crossfire of a conflict that could see missiles, drones, airstrikes, and proxy attacks on a scale not witnessed since the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. That conflict lasted 8 years, killed upwards of 1 million people, devastated economies, and left generational trauma that still influences regional politics today. The weapons involved in any new conflict would be far more lethal, far more precise, and capable of reaching civilian areas with devastating effect. This isn't just about military installations and oil infrastructure. Hospitals, schools, residential neighborhoods, and critical civilian infrastructure could all become targets either deliberately or as collateral damage. The global implications extend far beyond the region itself, and this is something every person watching needs to understand, because it will affect your life directly. A regional war in the Middle East would send energy prices soaring, not just for oil, but also for natural gas, much of which from Qatar and other Gulf states supplies Europe and Asia. Insurance rates for shipping would spike. Maritime traffic would be rerouted around Africa instead of through the Suez Canal, and supply chains already fragile from previous disruptions would face new shocks. Inflation, which many countries are still struggling to control, would accelerate. Stock markets would become volatile. Consumer prices for everything from gasoline to groceries would increase. And that's assuming the conflict remains conventional and regional, without expanding to include direct confrontation between the United States and other major powers with interests in the region. Russia and China are watching these developments extremely closely, and their potential roles add yet another layer of danger to an already volatile situation. Russia has maintained a military presence in Syria for years, supports the Assad regime that is allied with Iran, and has its own strategic interests in maintaining influence in the Middle East. Any American military campaign against Iran would unfold in a region where Russian air defense systems, intelligence capabilities, and even ground forces are present. The risk of accidental escalation, miscommunication, or direct confrontation between American and Russian forces is not zero. China, meanwhile, is Iran's largest oil customer and has invested billions in Iranian infrastructure as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. Beijing has no interest in seeing its energy supplies disrupted or its regional economic partners destabilized. Both Russia and China would likely use any American military action as an opportunity to paint the United States as an aggressor, rally international opposition, and advance their own geopolitical agendas. What makes Khamenei's warning particularly credible from a military analysis standpoint is that Iran has demonstrated its willingness to escalate in the past, even at significant cost. In January 2020, after the United States killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a drone strike in Baghdad, Iran responded with ballistic missile attacks on American bases in Iraq, the first direct Iranian military strike on American forces in decades. Over 100 American service members suffered traumatic brain injuries from those strikes, and only luck and warning prevented mass casualties. Iran's message was clear: we will respond directly, not just through proxies, when we perceive red lines have been crossed. That strike was calibrated to demonstrate capability without triggering immediate American escalation, but it showed that Iranian leadership is willing to take significant risks when they believe their core interests are threatened. The question now facing policymakers in Washington, Jerusalem, Riyadh, and other capitals is whether there is still a diplomatic off-ramp that can prevent this crisis from spiraling into open warfare. Negotiations over Iran's nuclear program have stalled repeatedly, with fundamental disagreements over inspection regimes, enrichment limits, sanctions relief, and regional behavior. Trust between the parties is virtually non-existent after years of escalating rhetoric, covert operations, cyber attacks, assassinations, and proxy conflicts. Each side believes the other is acting in bad faith, seeking to buy time while advancing military options. The space for compromise is narrowing with each passing week. Intelligence agencies are working overtime to assess Iran's true capabilities, intentions, and red lines, but fog of war is already settling over the region. Covert operations, both offensive and defensive, are underway on all sides. Cyber warfare targeting critical infrastructure, military networks, and nuclear facilities is ongoing. Israel has conducted airstrikes in Syria targeting Iranian weapons, shipments, and Revolutionary Guard positions. Iran has seized ships in the Persian Gulf, supported attacks on international vessels, and continues to expand its influence through Iraq and Syria. The undeclared shadow war that has been simmering for years is approaching a boiling point where one miscalculation, one retaliatory strike gone wrong, one intelligence failure could light the fuse. Military readiness on all sides is at peak levels. American carrier strike groups patrol the region with their full complement of aircraft, destroyers, and submarines. Israeli Air Force pilots are conducting training exercises for long-range strike missions. Iranian Revolutionary Guard units are on high alert, positioned to respond within hours to any attack. Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon have been placed on standby. Proxy militias across Iraq are preparing for contingencies. Missile batteries are armed, air defenses are activated, and command centers are operating around the clock. This is not peacetime posturing. This is the pre-war environment that historians recognize from studying the lead up to previous conflicts. What happens next depends on decisions being made right now in Tehran, Washington, Jerusalem, and other capitals by leaders weighing impossible choices between bad options. Do you strike now and risk regional war, or wait and risk nuclear proliferation? Do you trust diplomatic processes that have failed repeatedly, or pursue military options with uncertain outcomes? Do you prioritize short-term security over long-term stability, or accept risks today to prevent greater dangers tomorrow? These are the questions without clear answers, the strategic dilemmas that keep experienced military and diplomatic officials up at night. For you watching this video, the key takeaway is that we are living through a genuinely critical moment in Middle Eastern security dynamics, one that could reshape the region and global geopolitics for decades to come. This is not hype or exaggeration. The warnings from Iran's Supreme Leader are being taken with utmost seriousness by intelligence and military professionals worldwide. The capabilities for regional war exist on all sides. The motivations, grievances, and perceived threats are real. The strategic calculations are underway, and the margin for error is shrinking. Stay informed, watch the developments carefully. Understand that decisions made in the coming weeks and months could have profound implications for global stability, energy markets, international relations, and potentially for military conflicts that could draw in multiple nations. This is the kind of moment where paying attention, understanding the strategic landscape, and being prepared for various scenarios isn't paranoia, it's prudent awareness. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we will be tracking every development, analyzing every move, and bringing you the expert insights you need to understand what's really happening behind the headlines. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand the stakes. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on whether diplomacy can still prevent this crisis from exploding into war. And stay alert, stay informed, and stay ready for whatever comes next in this dangerous chapter of Middle Eastern history. The world is watching, the militaries are preparing, and the decisions that determine war or peace are being made right now.